Hey, this is Gordon for Inspiration Tots. Today we're gonna create this awesome wrench in 3ds Max, and this is gonna be part one, which is gonna be modeling. And please do me a favor and share this video because this helps a lot. Alright, this is the beginning in which we're gonna try to create this wrench in 3ds Max. So, first thing we're gonna create a box in the side viewport, and of course, after that we're gonna start adding details. And you better have a good reference image for this. Probably I'm gonna leave a link in the description. So or you just follow me through what I'm doing in front of you. So for now we are gonna try to actually start carving some of the details that are gonna be imprinted on top of this piece. And it's not gonna be something difficult. It's something easy and something everyone can do, but over time you're gonna learn to actually the basics, and it's gonna be a no-brainer over time. So as you can see here, I'm trying to extrude this area quickly here. And there are some few details that we are gonna actually add on the side. So I'm gonna select everything and try to connect, or we're gonna add some segments in other words. So we're gonna go about 18 of them, and we're gonna chamfer them once again. So in the chamfering process, we better make sure that these teeth, let's just say in the sides of this piece, are gonna be kind of they're gonna be pushed out a little bit. So we're gonna figure out what are the vertices that we're gonna select in order to make this possible. So this is just a test that you can see in front of you right now. I'm trying to test how it's gonna look like when we are done with it. And after applying the smoothing modifiers like Super Smooth, everything is gonna be much better. And after we add some sporting edges, which is the last step of modeling. So now we're gonna select the vertices that we are gonna work on, or actually we're gonna scale in order to perform the technique that we're gonna do in order to actually create these curves or these teeth. So we're gonna deselect, of course, the vertices that are irrelevant quickly like this, and we're gonna scale them in or scale them out depending on where you're gonna, depending on the direction you want to push them in. Okay, things look fine so far. The next thing we're gonna do is to create the piece on top of this one. So using this line is gonna be a smart way to create this quickly. So we're gonna disable or enable rendering in viewport, and we're gonna reduce the number of size to 4. And it seems like there has to be a change in angles. So we're gonna do this quickly because we want 45 degrees in order to for this side to be facing us, or actually the polygon on the side to be facing us. And now we're gonna apply the fillet tool in the spline editor, and as you can see here, it's giving us very good results over here. So the next thing I'm gonna do is to convert to editable poly and start working on the poly mode. And actually everything is subject to change later on, whether it be the size or the shape of these little pieces that compose or that create or that actually help us to create this wrench that we are working on. And it is important to bear that in mind, because um, throughout any step in the process we might change the size or the shape of these pieces. So you better be flexible through the modeling, because actually I'm looking at the ribbons, and I'm not working on top of it. That's why it's um, it's highly likely that I'm going later on to change the size or the shape of some of these pieces. So here we're gonna do create some teeth for this piece here, but it's gonna be a little bit different. So we're gonna try to select some of these vertices and push them to the side. We better select everything. All right. And in real life, nothing is actually as sharp as you can see here, so we better actually fix this because it has to be fixed. So we're gonna chamfer these edges a little bit. All right, I think this is gonna be fine. And there is a problem, of course, which is that these lines here are not perfectly vertical, so we're gonna try to fix this problem later, but it has to be fixed. Okay. All right, now I'm trying to create the last actually piece in the very end. All right. It seems like this piece is actually taking the shape we want it to take for now, for instance. And there are some things we're gonna apply to it later, but actually I like to work on pieces actually holistically, meaning that I like to actually give the prop or the project the overall shape. Then I'm gonna actually start adding details. So now I'm creating this plane in order to actually add a piece that is gonna be very important, and it's gonna be the piece that is gonna link everything together. So this may take a few minutes to create, but it is very important. So keep holding shift to extrude the edges, as you can see. Keep holding shift and move to extrude these edges. All right, we are given this piece a little bit of curves here in order to make it look something close to what we want. And this piece is actually a little bit tricky because um, it is actually a part of it's actually a piece that is going to be interacting with all the pieces together. So actually, I'm sorry. So actually, this piece is gonna be a little bit tricky because we're gonna have to actually tweak it and compare it to the rest of the pieces as we go in order to get the proportion that we are looking for. Actually, we're gonna spend as I'm going through this, I'm trying to study the proportional aspect between the pieces, and it's actually it's not that difficult, but I'm trying to get it right in order to avoid redoing the work later on. So actually applying the shape modifier is gonna give us thickness to and this thickness is gonna be important to turn the plane that we worked on into a 3D model. So uh, now there is a thing I'm gonna do, which is actually creating a void or space or a hole that is gonna make the interaction possible between the first piece and this piece here. So we're gonna create a bridge. We're gonna select the polygons that we are gonna delete, and we're gonna create a bridge to create this effect that we are looking for. All right, now we're gonna use this part of that piece in order to simulate or to create the other face or the other side of the mouth of the wrench. But of course, we need to modify it in order to get it to look like the shape we want to reach, or to which shape we want to get to. we actually have to do a little bit work on this part because it's a little bit different than the than this piece that we extracted for or detached from the previous piece that we worked on. And um, we're gonna bring or we're gonna detach this part and push it to the left side because it's gonna help us to know where the end of this piece is gonna be. All right, so we're gonna select some of the actually we are going to select the polygons that we don't need and delete them because it's actually better to work on something two-dimensional or a plane and then make it three-dimensional to avoid all the trouble of selecting and or accidentally selecting something that we don't want to. So keep holding shift and copy this part once or twice depending on the length of the this element that you are trying to modify. Alright, so now we are trying to weld some of the vertices that you can that must be welded in order to make this piece once again. Alright, it seems like this piece is actually taking the shape that we want. And it's matter of now it's a matter of proportion actually to get to the look that we are aiming for. So we're gonna bring it back to three-dimensional three-dimensional object by using the shell modifier. And after that, we're gonna use this element or this object here as a starting point for the rest of the pieces. So So now we're trying actually to, and this is something also actually something that is subject to change and modification later on. If you don't actually see the result that you are aiming for, right actually ahead of, actually if you don't see the result that you're aiming for right away, it doesn't mean it is over, because everything can be deleted, twisted, modified, or recreated later on. There is one thing I want to talk about here, which is the fact that when we extrude or extend this part, um, not this one here, not this piece here, but the piece that has teeth to it that we're working on, it's something that has a lot of details to it. Not details in actually in the sense that it is highly detailed and has many aspects to it, or it has some kind of spectacular looking details, but I'm talking about the poly count and the number of edges that we are using in order to make this work, which is not something that again is gonna help us moving forward. So we're gonna detach this one in order to avoid using all these useless edges later on when we move on to work on other pieces. So we better actually remove everything and separate the rest of the pieces from this piece, and we're gonna get the same results with much less actually much less effort, and of course with much less poly count when it comes to creating the next pieces. And actually I would say that the most important thing that we are gonna get from this is actually the ease of working on the next pieces, because working on a piece that has 20 edges at the same time going parallel next to each other is going to be actually difficult to for us to actually change the size or move the vertices, because you need to move them all in the same time, which is a little bit frustrating. This piece here is actually something that we actually touched on multiple times. So we better actually make sure that the pieces that we are working on are actually looking good, even if we are spending a little bit extra time to fix some of the aspects of the modeling that we did before. And I would say the most important thing to actually lower the attempts when trying to model something or actually spend less time on it with better accuracy is actually to study the reference images and actually plan ahead in your mind what you're gonna do ahead of time, because this is gonna actually help you to prepare mentally to do the modeling instead of thinking about it when you are in action. Actually, preparing to model is, I would say, more important than modeling itself. And there is an exercise that I do. I sometimes do. I'm trying to do it more often lately, which is actually drawing actually the prop. I'm gonna work on using the reference images actually to capture the details and nuances of the thing I'm trying to model in my mind, because if you don't actually just looking to the reference image is not going to register all the details and all the aspects of the model. So actually, when I recently bought a sketchbook specifically for that, a big huge sketchbook or of about, I don't know, almost 200 pages, which is gonna help me to actually draw my props or anything I want to create, and this is gonna help me capture the details of the model in my mind first. So when I'm modeling, I already know what the thing is gonna look like, and I'm not gonna spend much time looking at the reference images later on, because I've already actually experienced the creation of this model. And it's I would say it's like modeling the model for the second time. You're gonna feel the same thing. If you spend 2 hours modeling this wrench, I would bet that the second time you're gonna work on it, you're gonna spend less than you're gonna gain about 30 minutes at least, because a lot of the time spent in modeling is a time spent looking at reference images and thinking about what you're gonna do next. And this is something you're gonna actually avoid, or the time that you're gonna spend looking at reference images and thinking about what the next step is, you're gonna gain, or you're gonna actually avoid wasting ahead of time if you are smart about it. All right, so we're trying to capture all the details here, and this wrench is actually not that difficult to model, because it's something simple if we look at it subjectively. Alright, we're trying here to make sure the end is gonna be a little bit curved in a way that is gonna match the reference image we have. Alright, so now we are going to extrude these polygons to the inside quickly. Alright, we're going to do the same thing over here on the top. And don't worry about the other side because we're going to fix it later. Alright, so we probably need to actually extend this part over here, and as you can see here, I'm trying to keep the proportion between these two sections, between that curve and the piece that I am selecting right now. Keep the proportion. And there is another thing we want to do over here that is gonna bring a little bit more details, a little bit of detailed look to it. Alright, and I think this piece here is something that we need to keep upgrading constantly, because it is actually interacting with all the other pieces all around it. Alright, so this one here is gonna be even. There is a trick that we need to pull over here, because this part here is there is a problem between actually trying to kind of find a common ground between the inner side and the outer side of this piece, because the number of edges on the inner and outer side are not the same. So we're gonna try to do something here. We're gonna try to actually break this piece into two halves, and actually not the two halves, just not like this as you can see here, but we need to actually create a symmetry in the wall, in the outer wall of this piece, as I'm gonna show you here, because words cannot describe what I'm trying to tell you unless you gonna see it. So if we try to do this, as you can see, let's flip, it's not gonna work because we still have a problem of as you can see on the inner side, which actually is obvious that the problem is not solved yet. But you have to try to understand, um, to help you understand what we are trying to avoid here. Alright, even though this looks good to a certain extent, it's not enough, because as I said before multiple times, it's not gonna work. As you can see, if we plug this here and over here, we're still gonna suffer from a certain aspect of modeling, because this piece is a kind of cross section for all the other pieces, and if we try to if we don't pull it in the right direction, it's not gonna work. So the trick is something actually swift. It's kind of a quick solution for the problem, which is actually to apply symmetry on the outer walls itself. So as you can see, let's actually separate this and delete the half that we are not gonna need, and we're gonna apply symmetry on that one, on the z-axis. Alright, so the problem of the inner wall is actually solved right now. The inner side of the wall, let's just say, is solved, and now we can apply the bridge, and yeah, and the rest is actually very easy to do. So we're gonna create a copy and then create another bridge in the areas where we need to the areas that need to be bridged. Alright, so before we do that, we need to actually attach the pieces and create a bridge where necessary. Alright, so the modeling for this piece, I guess, is almost completed. So now we are trying to create a cylinder, and this one is actually this piece here is actually critical in the wrench itself, because it is the one that is gonna help us actually regulate and control um, uh, the actually the jaw of the wrench, and it's gonna allow us to have some mobility and control over it. Alright, now we're trying to actually find a proportion or the thickness that is gonna help us to actually see the cylinder coming out of this area. All right, it seems like this one here is almost in the right place. And there's another thing we need to do is to create a semi-cylinder under this one, and it's gonna be of course a little bit less when it comes to the radius and the height of it. So now we need to actually separate this one here into two halves, and we're gonna delete the one that we don't need pretty quickly. All right, so there is something very important that we are trying to create here, which is a hole inside this section that we are trying to work on right now. And it's not difficult to do this, but there are actually some scripts that help us to create holes in polygons. But for the sake of simplicity for new 3ds Max students, we're not trying to complicate stuff. Someone asked me in the comment section a few months ago, why don't you use the shortcuts in the scripts and the plugins and the stuff that we should normally use when trying to do things professionally? And my answer was simple and clear to this person, which actually asked nicely. The answer was that I'm trying here to actually simplify and trying to teach something in a simple way, and trying to actually show I actually can turn on expert mode and you're not gonna see anything, just polygons and vertices being thrown and very swiftly, and you're not gonna catch anything and you're not gonna understand anything. So the purpose of me making these videos is actually to teach and actually to help you comprehend the process that is gonna help you to achieve or to create these models in a simple way and in a fast way, as fast as possible, and maintaining the quality. And of course, the goal is always to help new people understand the software better and how to model things better and faster, if this is the case, until they become able to actually implement these tools and plugins in their workflow. I'm not gonna do this in my videos, or I'm gonna make specific videos explaining these, or until I am trying to actually work on something that is obviously professional level, and this is not supposed actually beginners are not supposed to learn from this, so it is not aimed for beginners. Then until then I might use some of the plugins and all the things I normally use in my production. And of course, to be honest with you guys, these creating these tutorials is actually very important for you guys, but it is important for me, don't get me wrong, but it's actually slowing me down too much creating these tutorials, and I can create a lot more if I'm not teaching you guys, but it is something that is worth it. I know, I don't think I know that this journey that we are embarking on is gonna turn into something great in the near future. So if you want to help me spread the message and to help others reach this channel on these tutorials, please share them. This is gonna be something that I will really appreciate if you do. And if you are actually listening to me right now, it means that you are someone you care, and this is something you care about. So, actually helping me grow this place and grow this channel is gonna be something that is gonna help you as well. Because as this channel grows, I'm gonna invest more time and more money into it, which is gonna help us both. I think that I'm gonna make this channel actually something that is gonna be very valuable for free for a lot of people. So the only obstacle I have is like a time. The will to actually teach and invest my time and money is there, but resources are actually something that we cannot actually afford. We can't afford most of the time. So if you there are actually a person who is generous enough to support me on Patreon. So um, thank you very much for doing this, and I appreciate that. And yeah, this is something that I'm gonna focus on in the future, which is a lot of creators are focusing on right now. And to be honest, it is one of the most effective ways for creators like me to sustain themselves on a platform like YouTube. Because let's be honest, the AdSense revenue is close to nothing. All right, over here, let's go back to the subject we were talking about. Um, Over here, I'm trying to actually create an extruded area, which is um, which is something that is gonna add to the look of this piece. And of course, we're gonna apply the same thing on the other side, so it's gonna be the same. All right, here I'm gonna try to do something which is to extrude section of this piece here, but let's try it. Let's figure it out. If it's gonna look good enough, we'll keep it. If it doesn't, we'll go back and leave it as it is. All right. Um, let's see. It actually doesn't seem good enough, so we'll actually leave it as it was before. Alright, now I'm trying to create some floating geometry, and this time is gonna be some text. Actually, I created other small pieces of floating geometry on top. That was a screw, two of them actually, and now we're gonna implement or put right there a text that says heavy duty. And we're gonna create another copy, and this one is gonna be a little bit bigger. I love to add these little details, cause it's um what gives the most the most beauty to the piece that you're working on. The basic geometry is very important, and it is essential, but the small details that you add afterwards is what matters the most, and is what is gonna make the difference. So this is gonna be a little bit flat, so we're not gonna keep it as high as it is right now. Alright, so the final stage of modeling, which is gonna be working on supporting edges for this wrench. So as you can see here, this video is gonna be a little bit sped up because the principle or behind this process is simple, and the promise is great, which is something that is gonna look cool at the end. So probably I'm not gonna talk too much here because this is something highly repetitive, but it is extremely important in order to get a solid looking hard surface model after we apply smoothing, the smoothing modifier, which is going to be turbo smooth in this case. Just notice that I'm using two methods to actually support the edges and the corners in this model, which is number one, I'm gonna use Swift Loop tool, and I am gonna use the ring and connect tools on the other hand, and each of these have their own advantage and disadvantage, but we're gonna talk about them quickly here. So the edge or the edge loop or the swift loop is a new tool. Actually, it was introduced to 3ds Max 2012 or 2013 or something, and it's very important to apply segments and support edges quickly, swiftly, and maybe a disadvantage or something that is not as cool as or not as good as the second method of ring and connect, which is gonna be a lack of precision. So if we are trying to actually, if we have two ends of a box or something, and we want to the two support edges on each side to be of the same distance away from the ends of this box, we're not gonna get that using the Swift loop manually. So here where the actually ring connect tools come handy, and they're gonna give us exactly the same distance between the two ends. And actually another thing about this tool, which is the fact that sometimes it doesn't, we cannot get into some actually hidden areas in the mall, or some corners that we cannot reach. So the this tool is gonna be a little bit difficult to work with, and sometimes I switch to the second method when necessary, and I actually use them interchangeably. As you can see here, I'm using the turbo smooth modifier to get the perfect look that we can see here. And to be honest, this stage is really rewarding when you see your model taking the shape that you want. All right, it seems like there is a problem over here, so um, we're gonna try to work through it quickly. And the thing about this process, and another thing that why doing supporting edges is important is the fact that over the course of doing this, you're gonna actually discover some of the things that you didn't finish, or the mistakes you have done, or the unwelded vertices that you left behind, and many other things. But the because the turbo smooth modifier, when applied, everything must be correct in order to for it to work properly. So sometimes we need to delete some polygons and start over to actually make things work. Sometimes we need just to actually weld some vertices and we're ready to go. Sometimes we need to flip normals. It doesn't matter. You have to fix it before applying the smoothie modifier. All right, now we're gonna work on this piece here, and we're gonna support the edges around it. We're gonna do the same thing all over again. And we're gonna do the same thing here because there are some areas over here that we didn't actually complete, and this is gonna be very simple to work on them. All right, so supporting these areas here on the bottom is a little bit tricky because it's gonna give an impression that that it's that it is not as smooth as it should be. So we had to push some of the vertices away in order to make it look smoother. Especially here in these in the areas where kind of we have rounded endings, we better be a little bit careful in order to not have that hard looking effect on rounded edges. It's not something rounded we cannot call an edge, but rounded endings, we better be a little bit careful by trying to actually redistribute the vertices in a way that is gonna be circular, which is actually not going to push that end to look hard edge. And now we are gonna actually separate these lines a little bit in order to actually make that section look even rounder. Alright, we're pretty close here, and so this is basically the last piece we're gonna add supporting edges to, and this one is gonna be a little bit interesting because we have to add some edges in order to actually create bridges between all these. So we're gonna select them manually, and of course select them as well on the other side in order to make the bridging process possible. And we're gonna cap these endings, or these empty areas. Well, we apply the chamfer tool in order to give it this look, but the thing is, it's not looking the way we want it to, so we're gonna have to delete the back end. So I think, guys, this is it for the modeling part of the wrench, and I hope you liked it. If you did, please subscribe to our channel and share this video. Share it so other people, other beginner students can learn from this. And yeah, this is gonna really help me a lot. So do me this favor, and I will see you in the next part.